بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وبه نستعين ثم الصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرج وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين. Dear sisters and brothers, Assalamu alaikum. Many thanks for coming. I really appreciate it. And those who are watching at home, thank you so much for your time. Tonight, I thought we could continue our habit of remembering a group of people and reciting a salawat for them. Two groups of people, inshallah, tonight. I was thinking one, maybe we could all remember our brothers and sisters in Afghanistan who are going through a difficult time. So let's please recite a salawat for them. Yeah, I think we really need another series just talking about the world, but inshallah maybe another time. And the second group of people I wanted to remember tonight are people who are going through physical disabilities or mental health challenges. Just wanted to let you know that we care and we remember you, and I hope inshallah more and more our communities could be inclusive so it would be easier for everyone to access. And so if it's okay, let's please recite another salawat for them. All right, are you ready for our discussion? Bismillah. Ahsan. Oh, today we got a new way of yes, that's ahsant. Thank you so much for that. So, if you remember, what we've been discussing in this series is that we were stuck at the surface of the religion. And as a result of that, two things happened. Firstly, we lost a kind of narrative that can we fully believe in and use to make sense of our life in a way that we know where we've come from, where we are, and where we're going. And as we lost that narrative, so many things happened to us. The past couple of nights, we're talking about this idea that as a result of living a certain way, we started putting things inside us. Do you remember like that example of a pot that you put the ingredients in? And slowly, these things that we put inside ourselves became patterns, and these patterns slowly took our agency and freedom away. We wanted to change, but we couldn't. We wanted to look at the world in a new way, we couldn't. And we said, as this happened, as we lost our freedom to change ourselves, slowly, not just our world became smaller and smaller, but we became smaller too, in what we called a reciprocal narrowing. We said both our world shrinks and we shrink. If you remember yesterday, we spoke about parasitic processing, in which something happens, we get hooked into a way of seeing the world, and we can't get out of it, and as a result of it, we keep thinking bad and bad things are going to happen. Good things fade from our attention. And even if we want to intervene and change it, it's not that easy. Or those who've been in an anxiety spiral know that even once you know it's happening, you can't stop it. Why? Because it starts using the same machinery that we had in order to be adaptable in this world. It uses the same against us. So these patterns we have inside us that take our freedom away, that limit us, they're almost, we can call them alive, because they're using our machinery against us. So you can see that when you, for example, get hooked into one of these spirals and you feel like everything bad is going to happen, you're doomed, you cannot tell yourself that, no, that's not the case. Because as you try to intervene, it's a dynamic system. It restructures itself and comes back. Because it's using your own cognitive machinery. And so you get stuck in a process in which the world becomes smaller and smaller and smaller. And as a result of that, you also become smaller and smaller. You can't focus on so many things you used to focus before. You can't do so many things you used to do before. And at some point, they don't even occur to you. And do you remember I told you I wish we could discuss this idea that how many of the things which are descriptions of what happens to us after we die, when you go at a deeper level of them, they're a description of our life right now. For example, have you heard how they say one of the problems after you die is that the grave becomes tight and tight and tight, like based on a certain life? Well, don't you feel like when we're stuck in one of these patterns in which we're just seeing pain and we can't get out of it, we are in that grave? In fact, it's not that we are in that grave, we are that grave. We shrink and shrink, literally become tighter and tighter. Not just the world, but ourselves. And this is why I said we need to go deeper in our understanding of religion. Because if we think that these things are certain things that are going to happen to us in the future, we can go around spending our life not knowing that they've already happened to us. And the things which were there meant to help us, they've really lost their power because we're stuck at their surface. Okay, so we said now we want to do the opposite of this. We have become smaller, our world has become smaller, we're stuck in the surface, we want to go to the depth. And then yesterday we discussed that the depth, initially we're talking the depth is akhirah, but then yesterday we said yes, the depth is akhirah, but then you can even go deeper. And the ultimate depth, the ground of being, as Paul Tillich calls it, is God Himself. هو الأول والآخر والظاهر والباطن. And as Imam Hussein said, as you start going towards the depth, slowly you realize that things are pointing you towards God. Things which before this were just an object. You would look at them like the finger. Do you remember we started talking about the finger? Things were just objects. But as you start this journey, they start becoming a pointer. Like the finger that is no longer a finger, but it's a pointer towards the sky, for example. And Imam Hussein said, slowly, everything in the world, people in your life, every event that happens to you, starts taking a deeper meaning. Well, in Islamic spirituality, they have this concept of ta'wil. You may have heard ta'wil with regards to Quran, but they use it with regard to life. They say every single event in your life, the surface of it is what you know. Masalan, this happened to me. That person said this. But it said at its depth, its ta'wil is that the world is trying to teach you something. In every single second of your life, there is a deeper reality to it. And as you start listening to these lessons that every single event of your life has, you realize that it's slowly pointing you towards the depth. أَنَّ إِلَىٰ رَبِّكَ الْمُنْتَهَى. Your destination is to go to the core, the ground of being, the reality which is at the depth, and that's God. Inna lillah wa inna ilayhi raji'un. We are going back to God. So now we have another piece of the puzzle. Where are we right now? Are we in dunya? No. We are in a reality that its surface, it's dunya, and its depth is akhirah. Where are we going? We're going to the depth of reality, to the ground of being, and then we'll realize that God is at the ground of being. But Imam Hussein said something interesting, which was again proved by the Quran as well. That as you start going to the depth, we said things become pointers towards God, but at some point they're not even pointers towards God. Everything just fades, and only God remains. Initially, we said events become like pointers. They point you towards God. Events in your life become lessons to teach you something. It's as if everything is helping you go towards that depth if you pay attention. But Imam Hussein says it reaches a place where they're not even pointers. They just fade and you can't see anything but God. And at that point in Dua Arafah, it said, عَمْيَةَ عَيْنٌ لَا تَرَاكَ. He said, when did you ever, blind is the eye that can't see you. When did you ever become absent so that I needed something to show you to me? When were you ever far that I needed something to take me to you? So at the end of our journey, we reach a place in which we can see God much more clear than the signs that previously we were using to get to Him. And we realize that not only God is the depth, God was the Dhahir as well. وَالْأَوَّلُ وَالْآخِرُ وَالظَّاهِرُ وَالْبَاطِنُ. In order to maybe, of course, no example can do justice to this, right? But in order to just make this a little bit more easy for us to understand, because as soon as we're stuck on the surface, these are just ideas, and we said propositional knowledge is not going to be that helpful. But just an example to get a sense of what are we talking about, this idea that God is at the depth of everything. Imagine we have, for example, Masalan Sheikh Jawad has started knitting, right? I've got the needle and the hook and I've started knitting and I've created, for example, I've made a jumper, a hat, and let's say, for example, some socks, right? So I've started knitting, I've created a jumper, a hat, and a sock. Now, you may be thinking, okay, we have 3 different items, right? And that makes sense. Yes, we've got a pair of socks, jumpers, and, for example, a hat. Now, I would say that that is at the surface of what you're dealing with. What do I mean by that? Okay, let's examine these. Let's, for example, take the hat in our hand and start to see what is the hat really made out of. Because we said that we have 3 different items. We have a hat, jumper, and a pair of socks. Okay, let's take the hat and slowly start to see what is it made of. Oh, it's made out of wool. And let's say we take one, a thread of the wool and we start pulling it and pulling it and pulling it. We realize, oh, the whole hat opened up and there's nothing there but wool. And then you do the same with the pair of socks. You see, this is wool as well. It's nothing but wool. And then you look at the jumper and then you see, it's the same thing. There's nothing there but wool. Okay, weren't they different? Socks, jumper, hat. But when we look to see what they are, there's nothing there but wool. It's just wool in the shape of a hat, wool in the shape of a jumper, and wool in the shape of a socks. But there's nothing there other than the wool. So we can say the jumper is a form. It's the dhahir of it. What is at the bottom of it? Wool. The same is with socks. What is at the depth of it? Wool. Let's say we take all the wool out of the jumper. Is there anything left? No. So what was it? What was it? It was just a form. Once you take the wool out of the socks, nothing remains. Take it out of the jumper, nothing remains. So this is when we say that the world is made out of a reality, a haqiqat. And that is what we call God. We call it God, we call it Allah. Some people may call it something else. God is the reality that is that thread that everything is made out of. هو الأول والآخر والظاهر والباطن. What is everything else? What was that jumper? Then what do we call jumper? Jumper was a nothing. It was a form. But once you take hack out of it, once you take the wool out of it, nothing remains. And this is why you see when God wants to explain what happens when the veils are removed from our eyes, because right now our eyes can only see what? The jumpers of the world, the socks of the world. We're not looking at the wool because we're stuck at the surface. Hello, God says either in this life reach to the depth and start seeing the wool in every jumper, or if you don't do that, at the moment of death that will happen to you. فَكَشَفْنَا عَنْكَ غِطَاءَكَ فَبَصَرُكَ الْيَوْمَ حَدِيدٌ. At the moment of death, you will see that. And this is why when God wants to describe what happens, it says, for example, you will see that the mountains will be removed, will be vanished. And what does it say? فَكَانَتْ سَرَابًا. And you realize the mountains were mirage all along. A mirage. They were that form that reality had taken at that point. They were just a surface. فَكَانَتْ سَرَابًا. It was a mirage. And this is what Imam Hussein is saying. I learned through my life أن مرادك مني أن تتعرف إلي في كل شيء حتى لا أجهلك في شيء. What you wanted me in this life was to introduce yourself to me in everything, so that there's nothing in which I can't see you, I can't know you. And he says, as I do this, as I go to the depth and I see this, I reach a point where I'm asking myself, where is anything else? It's very interesting. Ayatollah Hassanzadeh Amali, he has the line, he says, they ask me, have you ever seen God? I tell them, have you seen anything but God? فَأَيْنَمَا تَوَلُّوا, Quran says, فَثَمَّ وَجْهُ اللَّهِ. Wherever you look at its depth, you can encounter God. But of course, as Imam Ali explains in Nahj al-Balagha, this is not a simple thing, because a lot of people misunderstand this. They see, oh, so we can see, for example, God with these eyes. Imam Ali explains in Nahj al-Balagha, no. It's not with absar, it's not with the aql, it's with the heart, بحقيقة الإيمان. Right? So this has a way of being misunderstood. But Imam Ali says, see, it's not with the eyes, no. Something much deeper happens. It's just that because we're stuck at the surface, it's so difficult to make sense of it. All right. We have now another piece of the puzzle, and that is what is awaiting us. We said for a narrative, we need to, where are we and where are we going? Quran says, أَنَّ إِلَىٰ رَبِّكَ الْمُنْتَهَى إِنَّ إِلَىٰ رَبِّكَ الرُّجْعَى. Where you're going is towards God. We are on a journey and everything is going to point us to there, towards God, to go and meet God. And he said, can you meet God? God himself said, are you in doubt of meeting me? فِي مِرْيَةٍ مِّن لِقَاءِ رَبِّهِمْ. What is the process to get there? That's what we're going to talk about. The process, the name Quran uses for the overall process is dhikr. But then tonight we'll realize that dhikr is a very general term, a formula that can be approached using different ways. The first thing we need to know about this is that the place towards which we're going, rahimallah imra'an arafa min ayn fi ayn wa ila ayn, where you're going, we need to know that it's not like it's indifferent towards us. No. God is at the ground of reality waiting for us. Where? Surah Hadid, verse 16. A lot of you may be thinking now, oh my God, all these years I was stuck at the surface of the world, and I should start seeing more. All this isolation, all this feeling of who's going to take care of me, all these worries, all this pain. Do you remember yesterday we were talking about this idea that we create these patterns inside us that keep us stuck in pain? Do you know why we start most of those patterns? Just to feel safe. Do you know most of the habits which later on hurt us, even addictions, do you know why we started them? Just to feel safe. We had a pain. That's literally how addictions start. You had a pain, it was too difficult, you resorted to something to get some comfort because life was too difficult for you to bear. And you got hooked on that thing which gave you comfort and slowly started affecting your life. Hope now you may be thinking, all my life I was trying to protect myself, created so many patterns inside me that stopped me from seeing life, from enjoying life. We've literally been trying to protect ourselves in everything we do. But there's a way to connect to that reality which has had my back all the time. Do you know what that Rab means? Rab is literally the one who takes care of you. Why do we call, for example, an educator, a tutor, Murabbi? Because they do tarbiyah, they take care of you, they're like a guardian. And if God is Rab, Ya Rabbi, Ya Rabbi, Ya Rabbi, it means that all along there was a reality in this world that had our back. But because we're stuck at the surface, we couldn't feel that. So in order to feel safe, we had to resort to all sorts of different things just to feel a little bit safe, like we're going to be fine. And sometimes we couldn't even find anything, so we suffered. So God says, أَلَمْ يَعْنِ لِلَّذِينَ آمَنُوا أَنْ يَخْشَعَ قُلُوبُهُمْ لِذِكْرِ اللَّهِ. Is it not time for you to finally realize, I'm here, come a little bit deeper, and know that I've got your back? You are not on your own. You are connected. You were connected all along. إِنَّ اللَّهَ يَحُولُ بَيْنَ الْمَرْءِ وَقَلْبُهِ. That I wouldn't let anything happen to you if you were just coming towards me. أَلَمْ يَعْنِ لِلَّذِينَ آمَنُوا. Is it not time? And the rest of the verse, this is, by the way, Surah Hadid, verse 16. The rest of the verse breaks the heart. Because God says, don't be like other nations, previous ones. They were nice too. I even told them I'm here for them. I even sent them books, telling them this, that here I'm at the depth of this world waiting for you. But slowly, slowly they got stuck at the surface. طال الأمد فقست قلوبهم. Slowly, slowly they forgot about that I am the reality of their life. I became a word to them. I became something they started fighting over. And their hearts become hardened. God says, so many people before you, this has happened to them. Don't let the same happen to you. And why do you think God would put that in the Quran if it wasn't about to happen to Muslims? Because it already happened to us. And God does not say, remember me, come to the depth because it does good to Him. No. He says, see, if you're stuck at the surface, if you don't come to the depth, you'll suffer yourself. Do you remember how we were talking about your world shrinks and you shrinks as well? God says both of that. وَمَنْ أَعْرَضَ عَنْ ذِكْرِي فَإِنَّ لَهُ مَعِيشَةً ضَنْكَ. He says, if you forget me, if you forget the depth of this life, what will you have? مَعِيشَةً ضَنْكَ. Literally what we've been talking about. A shrinked life, a small world. You'll get stuck in a surface of pain, isolation. مَعِيشَةً ضَنْكَ. And not just that, you also forget yourself. نَسُوا اللَّهَ فَأَنْسَاهُمْ أَنفُسَهُمْ. He says, see, when you stop remembering the depth, when you stop living in the depth, not only مَعِيشَةً ضَنْكَ, your world shrinks, but فَأَنْسَاهُمْ أَنفُسَهُمْ. You lose part of yourself. You forget yourself. So this is why we need to go to the depth. And as we said, the Quranic understanding of the way to do this is called Dhikr. What is Dhikr? Dhikr is paying attention to the depth. We said the problem we have is that the surface of the dunya has become salient to us. So now, if we want to go away from the surface, what do we have to do? We need to make the depth salient. The process in which you make the depth of the world salient, it's called dhikr. Please recite the salawat. So what God expects from us now, and what we should do in order to live a better life, is to, in the same way that we got stuck to the surface, now we need to look beyond that and start seeing the depth. Do you remember that example of calligraphy? We said you can either see, for example, that the pen is writing calligraphy, or the hand is writing calligraphy, or no, it's not the pen, it's not the hand, it's the person. So now we need to do the same thing with the world. Slowly, slowly start seeing that everything that's happening, it's God behind it. Everything that we're seeing, we're stuck in the dhahir. Now we need to see the hand that is behind all of these. Allama Tabatabai in Al-Mizan has a line. It says the whole point, Al-Maqsood Al-Wahid, the only goal of Al-Milal wa-Nihal, all religious religions and also other forms of spirituality. He says they only have Al-Maqsood Al-Wahid, one goal, and that is Sarf Wajh Al-Insan Wara'i Hadhihi Nash'at Al-Tabi'ah. He says every single religion had one goal, and that was to take your attention, which was stuck at the handwriting calligraphy, to what's deeper, to the reality behind it. So that you see that beyond everything that's happening in this world, there's another reality at its depth, and that's God. It says literally everything Quran is trying to do is to tell you that beyond everything in this world, there's another reality. And not just Quran, but all religions all along. Imagine, for example, you've gone to a new city and you're visiting there, right? Let's say, for example, you've gone to Paris, first time, you want to explore. And you meet someone who accepts to take you around because you don't know where is nice. Where should I go? I've only one day in the city and I want to go around. So this stranger tells you, you know what, I'll take care of it, let's go. So he takes you to Champs-Élysées, he takes you to La Dorée, gets you some macaroons. Then, for example, he says, you know what, let's go, for example, it's getting close to sunset. Let's go, we can walk to Eiffel Tower, and then if it would be so cool if we can be there and watch this sunset in Eiffel Tower. Literally, he creates a lovely time for you. On your way, maybe you do a little bit of shopping in Champs-Élysées as well, and you're just so excited. Oh my God, I've always heard about this street, and it's so fun. And you're walking, for example, from the Arc of Triumph towards Eiffel Tower, and you see the light in these buildings, and everything is so beautiful. You get to Eiffel Tower, you're watching the sunset. It's so beautiful, and it says, oh, they're selling tea. Do you want to get a tea while we're watching? Yeah, sure. You start talking to this stranger. Such an amazing conversation, and oh my God, look at that view. It's perfect. Wow. And you're just in awe of this view, and you take a photo and you're talking and everything is good. You slowly you're walking back towards your hotel and you're like, damn. Oh, I promised my dad I'll call him and I know what I'm doing. I was meant to call him at, for example, 8 o'clock. Now it's almost 11. I haven't called him. He must be so worried. You go on WhatsApp and you see, yes, your dad is like, you okay, Habib? You okay? Everything okay? Everything okay? Maybe a few missed calls on WhatsApp. What happened? Well, things were so interesting, exciting. The macarons, the view, the lights, the atmosphere, all these scenes you'd seen in movies, and you forgot. You forgot. Well, imagine, let me tell you another way that this could happen. Imagine you've always wanted to go to Paris. This is, by the way, scenario number 2. That was 1. Let's go to scenario number 2. Imagine you've always wanted to go and you couldn't. So your dad says, you know what? Masalan, you did really well in your, GCSEs or for your uni, or I don't know, son, I just love you. I want to gift you a holiday. And by the way, I've talked to one of my friends there, good friend, this lovely person. I think your personalities match, by the way. And he said he'll take care of you there. Once you go to Paris, he'll come pick you up from the airport, he'll show you around. What has changed? Now, your dad is the one who arranged for you to meet this person who's showing you around. So, you get to Paris, from the moment you get to Paris, everything else is the same. He takes you to Champs-Élysées, everything repeats. But this time, as soon as you see the guy and says, hey, your dad sent me. Hello. And then you go to Champs-Élysées, he said, oh, by the way, your dad told me that I need to take you to this place. They've got the best macarons, La Dorée. And oh, by the way, when you go to shopping, your dad gave me some money. He said, we need to do some shopping. The money's on your dad. He's going to. And he said, oh, by the way, and then you want to go to Eiffel Tower. Oh, by the way, your dad said, I need to take you to Eiffel Tower as well. Everything is the same. You're doing all the same things. You go to the street, do some shopping, eat some sweets, go watch the sunset. But now, because you know your dad sent this person, every step of the way, what are you doing? Oh my God, bless that. Oh my God, he even gave money to him to buy stuff for me. And then you watch the tower and you're like, oh my God, my dad sent me here. I'm seeing this. God, I love you, Dad, so much. How many times do you think in that day would you message Dad and be like, oh my God, you gave him money too? And then you're like, oh my God, you told him to bring me here too? You keep messaging him. You keep messaging your dad and thanking him, right? Nothing changed. It's not like Eiffel Tower is distracting from your dad. No, it's just that you didn't have enough reason to think about him in the first scenario. But when you know he's the one who put all of this in place, every step of the way you remember him. Oh, he's the one who, The same is with God. Do you know why it's so difficult to remember God in this world? Because we can't see that His hand is behind everything. Like the first scenario, we feel like everything is happening to us. But Quran says, Imam Hussein says, you can get to a place where you see that everything that happened, God's hand was behind it. Just like how your dad found that guy. Your dad gave him the money to do the shopping for you. Your dad told him to take you to that place. Once you live that way, everything becomes a sign of God. Everything reminds you of Him. See, what does Quran say about the people who start seeing the world this way? Which surah is this? Surah Nur, verse 37. رِجَالٌ لَا تُلْهِيهِمْ تِجَارَةٌ وَلَا بَيْعٌ عَنْ ذِكْرِ اللَّهِ. He says you can get to a place where even you're doing business, you're doing tijara bay, you can still remember God. Why? Because you see God's hand behind everything. See, and the problem we have is that even when we pray, which is literally the time we're trying to talk to God, we don't remember Him, right? Even in our prayer, our mind goes to, oh, I need to do this, do that. And this is, by the way, I'm not judging us. These are not easy. It's all about the vision that changes that. But I'm saying we, even in our prayer, don't remember God. And then God says there are these people that they could be talking to someone else. They could be doing business, they're remembering God. And that's why I shared that story with you. Once you see the hand of God behind everything, that everything is just a reminder of what God's doing for you. Oh, God gave me God now created this view for me to enjoy. Oh, God gave me this sky to enjoy. Oh, God sent this person to love me. Oh, now this. Oh, now that. And your whole life becomes a constant process of dhikr, of remembering that reality that is behind everything. Now let's talk a little bit about how can we create that? How can we have this kind of dhikr? Dhikr, we said, is Quran's technology. I mean, let's not call it technology. It's the overall formula. There are different technologies to create dhikr. But Quran calls the whole process, the overall thing, dhikr, of going to the depth. Let's talk a little bit about dhikr, what it means to us. See, most of us, when we think of dhikr, what does come to our mind? I can ask you, masalan. Some of you may say, there are certain things we say. Masalan, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. We call this dhikr. Some people say, for example, maybe reading Quran is dhikr. Some people may say, you know what, sitting down and thinking about God is dhikr. So what is dhikr? See, dhikr, what it means is to use something, although we can call it, for example, a symbol, in order to hold a reality in mind. What do I mean by that? Let's say you want to, for example, think of justice. Justice is such a complicated idea, you know. What is justice? It's so difficult to define. There are so many things about it. But a lot of people, when they, for example, focus on that lady of justice, you know, that symbol of justice, which is like a lady with a blindfold and holding a... That helps them to hold that in mind, right? So sometimes you use a symbol, like a pointer, in order to hold in mind a reality that is difficult to keep it in your mind. It's like a pointer, but it's deeper than that, although we don't have time to speak about that. Quran sometimes refers to this as what? Ayah. The reason the verses of the Quran are called ayah is that you don't read them because you read them. No. You read them so that through them you can understand something about God, about reality. That's why it's called ayah, a sign, for example. Right? مثلا you read Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. I mean, it's so difficult. I don't مثلا sit down and try to hold God in your mind. Hope it's impossible. How can I do that? It's very difficult. But God says, hope, you know what? Let's make it easier for you. Instead of that, let's use an ayah. Let's use something in the middle. Let me give you something, مثلا Alhamdulillah, or let's think of easier one. Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim. He says, you want to think of me? It's difficult. Hope. Use this word Ar-Rahman to think of me. How do I do that? We say Ar-Rahman. What does it mean? Loving, all loving. And slowly, through this, you start thinking about God. God is loving. God is loving. And the more you reflect on it, the more opens up for you. Or مثلا إن الله, what is it? معكم. هو معكم أينما كنتم. This verse on its own here is just a verse. It's a word. That's not very special. What's special about it is that it's an ayah. So هو معكم أينما كنتم. So you start thinking about this and use it to understand things about God. هو معكم أينما كنتم. Let's do this right now. It's enough with prepositional knowledge. Right now, if you want to close your eyes, close your eyes. If you're not comfortable, don't. Let's for a few moments have a proper dhikr. هو معكم أينما كنتم. He is with you wherever you are. Allow this sentence to teach us. Let's allow this sentence to change us. God is with us wherever we are. We're here. That means God is here. هو معكم. God is with us. God is here right now. God is here. God is here. هو معكم. That kum is us. هو معنا. God is with us right now. Just let that stay a little bit in your heart. God is with you right now. Okay, who is saying that? God is saying that. God sent the Quran. So let me change the sentence. I am with you here. God is saying. Forget about the people next to you. Who cares if they think we're silly? Let's do the proper dhikr. God is saying, I am with you right now. This is ayah. Initially, how difficult would it have been maybe to feel anything about God? But we use an ayah, a symbol, to slowly learn something about God, experience something about God. And by the way, something that could help you is if you're reading the Quran, see what becomes salient to you. That's a better ayah for you. Maybe an ayah works for me now, another ayah works for you. Right? But this is literally what a symbol is. So, in order to pay attention to the depth, we said we can't imagine the depth. We can't just start thinking about God. So we need these symbols, these pointers that take us to the depth. These pointers that, I can't imagine God, so I think of an ayah, a symbol, and through that I try to go to the depth, just like what we did right now. That's why the verses of the Quran are called what? Ayah. Because every single one of them is trying to point you to deeper realities. That's why if you just read them without thinking about them, there are so many ahadith that لا خير في قراءة لا تدبر فيها. There's not that much point if you just read it and don't use it as a symbol. Don't do tadabbur on it. Maybe if we have time, I'll speak about how to read the Quran later on. But Quran itself, I am not the only symbol of God in the world. I am not the only ayah. Quran says slowly you realize that every single thing in the world is what? A symbol. سنريهم آياتنا في الآفاق وفي أنفسهم حتى يتبين أنه الحق. Quran says, see, every single thing in this world is an ayah for God. في الآفاق وفي أنفسهم. Everything outside and everything inside you is an ayah for God, which means that it's like a pointer that you can look to and be pointed at God. Haven't you had, for example, maybe a person in your life through which you learned something so deep? That was an ayah. God wanted to teach you something. Masalan, I learned about God's love through my mother. She was an ayah of God for me. I learned what it means to love someone so unconditionally, so beautifully, without expectation. So even sometimes people are in our life are ayah. So according to Quran, everything in this world is a symbol and ayah to take us towards God. But what is the problem is that sometimes when we want to do this, when we want to do dhikr, it's so difficult again. Because one of the things again with dhikr is that it can't be only a few minutes. Because look what dhikr is trying to do. Let's think about what is dhikr trying to achieve. Let's remind ourselves of the discussion yesterday. Why are we stuck at the surface of the world? Why can't we see God? Because our hearts have become hardened. We put things inside ourselves, patterns, habits, malakat. They stop us from seeing God. Now, in order to see God, what should happen? These patterns should melt. These malakat should be melt. The ways in which we try to keep ourselves safe and we locked ourselves up, we need to feel healed and let go. So dhikr is like a kind of, we can call it the light, the heat of God, shining on the ices in our heart to melt the patterns, the malakat, the bad ways in which we look at the world, the ways we try to protect ourselves and we locked ourselves down. Maybe we went through a trauma and we closed down, and as a result of this, we can't see joy, we can't experience life. We're keeping all of these inside. And dhikr is like a light that should be shining and melting them. So that's why if I just remember God for a few seconds, that's not enough to melt that. So if I, masalan, for example, feel a few minutes of dhikr, and that's it next another month, it will help me. But it's not healing enough to melt all of these patterns. Imagine, for example, we said a lot of the ways in which we're suffering is that we created patterns to feel safe. How can I let go of that pattern? Well, I need to feel safe. Pas masalan, if one of God's name is Rab, which means the one who takes care of me, do you know how long I need to stay with that name in the heat of God's love and care, so that slowly I can feel taken care of, and only once I really feel like He's there for me, I can slowly allow the patterns I created to protect myself melt slowly, and for me to be able to experience life again. It takes time. And that's why dhikr, for a lot of us, it's difficult. Because maybe we can manage, masalan, a few minutes in a day, or a few minutes in Ramadan. But to keep dhikr long enough, that light shining long enough to melt the patterns, to melt the pain away, we don't know how to do that. This is where we'll talk about tomorrow. I'll just say the introduction for tomorrow because I don't want to leave you hanging. Quran says there is a solution. Let me read the verse for you and we'll talk about it in more details tomorrow. يا أيها الذين آمنوا عليكم أنفسكم. Allama Tabatabai, when he's explaining this verse, he says, see, we were trying to use ayat to remember God. Try to use like a mirror, a magnifying glass to bring the light of God in our heart. But the problem is we keep getting tired. Masalan, if I want to read Quran, I read a few pages, I get tired. Masalan, if I want to remember God through watching a lecture, I can't watch lectures all day. Or for example, if I want to go to Hajj, I can't go Hajj every minute here. He says, what is that way, what is that ayah that I can use as a magnifying glass to point it at God's light and bring that light into my heart and allow it to melt my pain? Do you remember as kids we would use magnifying glass and direct it at the sun and put maybe a paper on it to burn the paper? You had to get the right angle and wait long enough so the light from sun would come through the magnifying glass on the paper and burn the paper. That's what we're trying to do, burn the patterns. But what is that magnifying glass that we can hold long enough for the paper to burn? Because if you do it 2 seconds, it's not going to burn. Quran says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu alaykum anfusakum. The sign of God that you can look through to see God and find God and you will barely get tired of is yourself. Not only this is one of the great things about you because you're always with yourself. We were trying to read Quran to remember God. We're trying to look, and Quran said, no, even the world is ayat. سَنُرِيهَمْ آيَاتَنَا فِي الْآفَاقِ. The whole world is ayat. But the world, I can't always look at the trees, always look at the mountains. He said, وَفِي أَنفُسِهِمْ. You yourself are the best sign of God. And that's why self-knowledge is considered the best way to have dhikr. Because as we say later on, مَنْ عَرَفَ نَفْسَهُ فَقَدْ عَرَفَ رَبَّهُ. The best symbol, the best ayah of God on earth is you yourself. إِنِّي جَائِلٌ فِي الْأَرْضِ خَلِيفَةً. You are the Khalifa of God. So if I want to be able to look at God, the best ayah I have is myself. Every single one of us. يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا عَلَيْكُمْ أَنفُسَكُمْ. So that's why tomorrow we'll speak about how to use ourselves as an ayah of seeing God. Please recite salawat. I was wondering, I was like, what if someone says, because I still haven't explained it, what do you mean I can be a sign of God? What do you mean I can point people to God, put myself to God? But I'm so lucky I don't need to spend time to explain that because tonight is the night of Hazrat Abbas. Do you doubt that you can see so much of God's beauty in him? I don't think you doubt that. So please right now, let's bring our hearts and inshallah we'll benefit from the beautiful recitations of Mullah Qadmi and with the zikr of talawat.